Hi, I'm Julie Hill, and today I'm going to show you how I make a t-shirt from start to finish. In this video, part 1, I'll be making a t-shirt pattern for my daughter, and I'll show you my tricks for cutting it out. And then in the next video, part 2, I'll sew the whole thing together. The best way I found to make a t-shirt pattern is to copy an existing t-shirt, one that fits just right. I got this one from a thrift store for about $1. It doesn't matter if it's ugly or worn out or has a hole in it. It just has to fit well. I also buy a sheet while I'm at the thrift store, one that I can cut up for my pattern. I look for a bed sheet that's not too flimsy or wrinkly, and I get a light color so that my writing will show up on it. I spread the sheet out on my bed and put the t-shirt on top, making sure to leave space around it, especially under the hem. Now I use straight pins to hold it in place, and I stick them straight down into my mattress, pretty far. And you can see that as I'm pinning it into place, I pull at it and smooth it into the right shape. And don't worry about the sleeves for now. I use a ballpoint pen or marker to draw directly onto the sheet. And I'm just going to put dashes along the sides and shoulders, right under the edge. I need to put some dashes right under the seam. Usually I just draw them on, like this. But I want to show you how to be accurate. So I will stick some pins directly into the seam. And then draw a dash wherever the pin is sticking through the sheet. Okay. And I do the neck the same way. Here's the front. Okay, and the back. Right here. for the hem, I just draw a straight line. And since this is the fold line of the hem, then I write fold. And some arrows. And now we can take the pins out and look at it. Okay, this is my stitching line, and now I need to draw the cutting line. On a store-bought pattern, they put the cutting line way out here at 5/8 of an inch. And I think the reason for that is so you can let it out later if you need to. But since I already know that this shirt will fit, I don't have to have such a big seam allowance. I draw my line about here, because when I'm sewing, I like to put the edge of my fabric right at the edge of the presser foot. So my seam allowance is 1/4 of an inch. So you can measure as you go. Or just sketch it on. And when I get to the fold line of the hem, I add about an inch. So I can see that my pattern is not the same on both sides. It's almost 4 inches here and less than 3.5 inches here. On the t-shirt, here, and this side, yeah, a lot smaller. And unfortunately, it is common for t-shirts to be lopsided, even the expensive name brand tees. But I want my shirts to be right. So I'm going to cut out the side that looks bigger. And fold it over. Now I have to decide where to change it. If I try to match up the arm openings, then the neck would be way off. And also the side seam. So the best thing, I think, would be to change the arm openings. So I'll match up the neck and shoulder and most of the side seam. Then I'll need to extend the arm opening on this one, and I'll be cutting off some of this one. So I'm going to draw my line about in the middle between the two. There. And now I can cut it out. And here's the changes I made. Now I'll be cutting my pattern in half, all the way up this fold. And I'll pick one side to be the front, and the other side will be the back. So for the front, I cut off the back neckline. And I'll write front on it. And for the back, I just scribble out the front neckline and write back. And this will be the fold line. And this side. And I want to fix this down here. I think it should say hemline. And one more thing, I need to put a notch here at the center of the front and the back, and that'll help me put the ribbing on later. Time for the sleeve. I spread out the sheet and pin the sleeve into place. And I make sure to pull it as much as I can from here to here, because the sleeve has a tendency to be too small when I go to sew it on to the rest of the shirt. So I even make it a little larger here at the underarm seam when I draw my dashes on. And it's easy to cut that off later on, but if it's too small, there's no way to fix it that looks good. So I draw a straight line for the hem and the fold line. And I'm going to put straight pins through this seam to show me where to draw my dashes. Okay, I'll label this the hemline. And this is the fold. Oh, and my 1/4 inch seam allowance. And when I get to the hem, I add about an inch. And I know that I'm going to need a notch here at the center of the sleeve, right where it folds. Now I can cut it out. Here's my notch. Okay. And this pattern is done. Now that my pattern's done, I'll need some fabric to make this t-shirt for my daughter. And I found that the best fabric to use to make a small t-shirt is a bigger t-shirt. I got this one from a thrift store for $2. I like to use thrift store tees for lots of reasons. For one thing, they've already probably been washed a lot, so I won't have to worry about it shrinking later on. Another thing I like is the fabric comes with its own neck ribbing. And then there's the price. Stretch knit or jersey fabric probably costs around $9 a yard at a fabric store, and there's not much of a selection. So, when I go to the thrift store, I bring my patterns with me, and I look for clothes that are big enough to use as fabric. The first thing I have to do is remove the neckband with my seam ripper. This part is kind of a pain. It can take a long time. The neckband is removed. And now I'm going to open up this shirt by cutting it along the sides. Okay, and I can start cutting out my pattern pieces. So fold it in half. This is the front. And make sure to cut the notch in the neck. And now the back. And the notch. You can cut the sleeves out one at a time or both at the same time. I like to put my pattern's hem directly on the hem that's already there. I do this whenever I can so that I don't have to hem it. Don't forget the notch. Okay, but sometimes you can't use the existing hem, like if you're using a long sleeved shirt. In that case, I would have to cut it out along the cutting line, and I would go ahead and hem it before sewing the sleeves on the shirt. And I'll show you how I sew a blind hem for a t-shirt in the next video. My daughter's t-shirt is all cut out and ready to sew, so be sure to look for part 2 of how I make a t-shirt to see how I put it all together. Thanks for watching.